liver, it may remind you of something you saw before. Maybe you've totally forgotten it. It reminds me of something. What does this look like? An organ that you've seen before.
The spleen.
The what?
The spleen.
Yes, the spleen. The red pulp of the spleen. Does it not look like the red pulp of the spleen?
Yeah.
It is. I'm kidding. This is the liver. This is the liver. But like the spleen, it's got this tortuous network of capillaries called sinusoids or sinusoidal capillaries. Remember the spleen I told you? You call them splenic, okay, sinuses. You call them sinusoidal capillaries, okay, or sinuses. That's what these are, except they're called hepatic sinusoids. It's a very porous capillary. It's the one that has the big gaps in the wall, so big, in fact, that red blood cells can pass through. That's something you should know for the exam. Different types of capillaries, remember? In the spleen and the liver, you got these real porous capillaries, so porous, they're also called discontinuous, red blood cells can pass through. What's the spleen doing with red blood cells? And the liver, too. It's getting rid of worn out red blood cells by virtue of the macrophages. In the liver, they got a fancy name, they're called Kupffer cells. Okay? It also gets rid of debris, all right? And these capillaries are larger than most. It's a tortuous network, so the blood flow is really slow, so the liver has time to work on what's passing through. Okay? Now, where does the blood go? The blood goes into what are called central veins, like you see right here. Okay, so think of this like the brain. Capillaries basically are carrying the blood into this central vein, which is the middle of a lobule. That's the function of the liver. That's going to go into interlobular vein and into hepatic veins, which drain the blood into the inferior vena cava. If you turn in your textbook, you got it handy, part of the liver. Okay, this would be page 882 or 879. And there's some diagrams of the liver. You might want to turn there. Again, you got a network of capillaries, hepatic sinusoids. They drain into the central vein, which in turn carries blood from interlobular veins to the inferior. There you have it. Go back. Go back one. Right there. Okay. Now, where does the blood come from? I'm glad you asked. Okay, it comes from two blood vessels in what is called a portal triad. This is on your handout again. Portal triad, triad means three. You got two of which are blood vessels, bringing blood into those liver capillaries or sinusoids. And the third vessel is a bile duct. And again, like the ducts we saw in the pancreas, they're made up of simple cuboidal epithelium. You see the rounded nuclei here? That's a bile duct. One of the things the liver does is produce bile. It's secreted into little canals called bile canaliculi, which drain into these bile ducts at the edge of the lobules in what's called a portal triad. Then they collect in larger bile ducts and eventually go to the common bile duct and are carried into the small intestine. All right, so here's the portal triad. Bile duct, carrying bile produced by the liver, and then two blood vessels, which are quite different. Both are bringing blood in those capillaries, but different kinds of blood. This one and this one. One is a vein, one's an artery. Actually, a small vein, a small artery. What's this? It's a small vein. It's called a venule. And it's a tiny branch from the hepatic portal vein. So it's bringing in blood to those capillaries of the liver, but it's not oxygen-rich blood. It is nutrient-rich blood. Remember, the hepatic portal vein is doing what? It is draining capillaries in the GI tract rich in nutrients absorbed from your food that you've broken down, and supplying capillaries in the liver. Because the liver processes most of what comes out of the intestine before it goes on to the rest of the body. It'll store some of those nutrients, it'll modify some, and then they go out to other parts of the body. The liver's like a big chemical fat. Okay? So we call this the portal venule. Do not call it the hepatic portal vein. It's a tiny branch of that. You can call it the hepatic portal venule, but not the hepatic portal vein. Or you can just simply call it the portal venule. Rest, what's it carrying? It's carrying blood rich in nutrients, not rich in oxygen. The other vessel here is an arteriole, a small artery. You can see, thick wall, relatively small lumen, as opposed to thin wall and large lumen of the venule. This is a hepatic arteriole, and contrary to what your book says, okay, it is not a portal arteriole. A portal vessel basically goes from capillary bed to capillary bed. This does not. It's a small branch off of the hepatic artery. So don't call it hepatic artery, call it hepatic arteriole. This you might expect is bringing oxygen-rich blood, as you'd expect an artery to do. Okay? So in your book where it says portal arteriole, please change that to hepatic arteriole. And don't say, well, the book says, okay? The author of your book's not making up the exam. I will not accept that term. It's erroneous. It should not be called that. It should be called a hepatic arteriole. It's not a portal arteriole. Okay? Those three vessels make up what we call the portal triad. 2 blood vessels, and then the bottom. Hepatic arteriole bringing in oxygen-rich blood. Portal venule bringing in nutrient-rich blood to those capillaries. And then draining bile, the bile duct. You just call it bile duct. Later on, when you get to bigger ones, then they have fancy names. Right hepatic duct, left hepatic duct, common hepatic duct, cystic duct, common bile duct. Okay, that you can see on the models, liver models. Okay. Any questions on the liver? Okay. All right, lastly, the pan.